And now for the most important piece of filtration equipment, the reverse osmosis filter. This is one that I've had for a fair few years, and it's just a normal 2-pod design with the pre-filter and also the carbon block, and then of course you've got the membrane that sits in here, and I've also got a pressure gauge on there too and a backwash. What I decided to do at one point was actually put a deionizing pod on the top here, so it's a proper full RODI unit, and that actually brought my my total dissolved solids reading down to 0 as soon as I added that deionizing pod on the top of it. The way it's plumbed into the water supply is by use of this separate tap that I asked a plumber to come and fit in for me. Basically it's just a standard washing machine fitting with a tap here, so it can actually be switched on and off independently. And also what I've done is I've got one of these black attachments here that fits onto a washing machine fitting at one end, but it's got the reverse osmosis coupling on the end just here. What I have had in the past is one of these, which I just got from a hardware store, particularly useful if you don't actually own the property where you're fitting your reverse osmosis filter, so you're actually only wanting to fit it temporarily without making any changes to the plumbing. It was just one of these I got, which basically you fit it in place of the washing machine fitting, so you unattach the washing machine fitting, screw that in its place, put the washing machine fitting on one of them for the washing machine, and then on the other one you put the fitting for the reverse osmosis filter. The only downside to that is if you want to use the washing machine, you've got to make sure that you've got the water going to the reverse osmosis filter, so it's going to both of them or neither of them. So if you wanted to shut the RO filter off, as I do most of the week, it means that you've got to switch it on if ever you wanted to wash some clothes. Because I'm ready to start filling the aquarium up now with reverse osmosis water, what I'm going to do is give the 2 pieces of dry rock a blast with the shower head, just to loose any debris that's on here. Very important, what I've done is I've put down a nylon tray here just to make sure that I protect the plastic bathtub from getting scratched, because this rock is quite sharp. That surprised me actually. There was quite a lot of debris that came out of those rocks, but having said that, seeing as it would have been living rock at one time, I don't suppose it's too surprising. You can use a jet wash apparently to wash this stuff, but I think if I'd have done that I would have wanted to have worn goggles, because there's quite a bit of grit that flew out of it. Yeah, anyway, obviously that saves any of that debris actually being in the tank if it's washed out at this point. Something else that I've done is I've fitted a grill to the top of the overflow box, basically to stop anything from falling down into it and clogging up the pipe work. Basically what I've done is I've just made it out of egg crate and trimmed away the underside where it needed it, so that it fits properly. But that fits on there quite well. I mean, the water level itself will only go up to about here. I think it's highly unlikely any snails or anything like that's going to jump over, but at least it would stop any fish from falling in there. One of the things that I'm not too pleased with is the electrics. I think I could probably do something a bit neater than this, but basically in the sump here, in the lower compartment, I've basically just fitted a 6-gang extension lead. There is a trip switch on the other end of it where it plugs into the wall, so it should make it a lot safer. But basically that's all I've done with the electrics. Something else I've done for the refugium section, it's probably completely unnecessary, is I've decided that I want to have a small rock in there for the critters that will end up living in there, for somewhere for them to go. So what I've done is I've basically kind of smashed a rock up so that I've got a rock of a particular size, and because I'm going to have a deep sand bed in here, what I've done is I've siliconed some PVC pipe to the bottom of it, or I should say, yeah, I've actually, that's not siliconed, I've used epoxy putty and drilled some holes in it, so anything that's it shouldn't impede the sand that's in there. Also, what I've done is I've taken a drill bit and I've actually drilled lots and lots of holes in there in various sizes, so that I think it's little copepods and things like that. I've got places to live in there, and hopefully it'll cause quite a lot of beneficial organisms to exist in there and give them a little place to live. Something else that I've done with the sump, just to try and keep evaporation loss down, is fitted a small lid here. Basically, it's fairly tight fitting on this half of the sump. Really, it's the closest part to the electric, so I'm wanting to keep evaporation loss down, and of course any splashes as well. So basically, that's just fitted on there like so. I couldn't imagine not having one of these. This is a TDS meter. I bought it for about, I think it's about £8.50 from eBay, and that included delivery. What it is it's a digital probe, and when you've got a sample of your reverse osmosis water in a clean glass or a cup, you stick the electronic probe into the water, obviously switch it on first, and it gives you a reading, and it should give you a complete zero flat reading. So that lets you know that your reverse osmosis filter is working correctly and the water that you're putting into the aquarium is completely clean and pure. What I've decided to do when it comes to filling the aquarium with the reverse osmosis water to save any splashes is I've put the first of the buckets on a small table, and I'm actually going to siphon the water from the bucket into the sump and then use the sump pump to pump it up into the aquarium. Okay, so the reverse osmosis water is now in the tank, and I've got the main pump switched on here in the sump, and I've also got the power head switched on in the aquarium itself, and I'm just slowly adding salts to the water. I'm actually adding it directly into the aquarium and just allowing the pumps to dissolve that in the water there. In the sump here, where it's nice and quiet, I've got a thermometer, and also I've got one of the floating hydrometers, just so that I can see roughly how much salt is actually being added to the aquarium, and then when it looks as though it's about right, then I'll start testing it a little more accurately. I've made a slight modification to my filter area just here where the overflow comb is in the sump. The water was flowing over here and mainly coming through this part of the filter floss just here before entering into the main return area. What I've done is I've actually created or I should say cut a piece of acrylic with a little handle on it that's the same size as the surface area, and drill lots of holes in it so the water comes across now and slowly starts to filter through the floss, making more use of the filter area that's in there. What I've also done at the bottom is I've purchased some, I think they were Fluval, filter pads, and cut them to size and put them at the very bottom. I've purchased my automatic top-up device. It's one of these V2 auto top-ups that I've gone for. It's just a standard system with one float switch, and basically this is what the float switch looks like. You've got the float actually in here within this casing, but it attaches via this plastic arm and a sucker. So the sucker is what goes against the glass, and you've got this dial here that basically tightens it against the glass. However, I found that it still slipped even though it's got this dial on it, so what I did was I sawed through here to actually remove the sucker altogether, so that basically what I've got is just the float switch on an acrylic arm. And what I've also purchased is one of these Tunzi nano magnet sets, the idea being that I will take one of the magnets and actually glue it onto the side here. So what I've got then is the float switch magnetically able to clamp onto the side of the glass rather than using the sucker.